airports have changed drastically, and that change has been driven by consumers, the travelers. They are dictating the pace today. They're dictating what they want to see in terms of goods and services, what they want to eat, what they want their experience to be at the airport. And we're using the opportunity, which is our TRIP, Terminal Renovation and Improvement Program, to be able to better focus on the needs of the passenger. A lot of infrastructure work is going into TRIP. About 70% of the dollars is really going towards that purpose of trying to make the terminals much more accessible, not only from upgrading the utilities, but also updating how passengers use the airport, allowing them to have a lot more flexibility in terms of gate check-ins and as well as parking, because part of this is building a whole new parking lot for Terminal A, and hopefully we'll be able to extend that to some of the other terminals as we go through this process. We're taking the opportunity to just really look at the envelope, inside the envelope, and ways in which we can make that whole experience better. And a byproduct of that, which I think is the reason why we're doing it, is all about concessions, right? Is using that opportunity to better align our concessions retail space with the passenger flows. So being in a terminal or terminals such as what we have at DFW, where it's a U-shape, we're looking at ways in which that we can have all of our locations really at the points of where our passengers are entering the building or transferring around the building. So there'll be passengers hopefully around everybody's door, and getting away from just cookie cutting how we want the terminals to look like, but really trying to add in some unique experiences. With that being said, what this chart is just showing you that, as I had mentioned, on into 2017, that we are phasing in various sections of the 4 different terminals, as well as come next year, we'll start the phasing of Terminal D retail. And 2 years after that, then we'll start phasing in the Terminal D food and beverage. So at any point in time from this day forward, we're going to be in anywhere from 3 to 4 sections of our terminals. So lots of activity and a lot of moving pieces in parts, which is what I said that Mr. Brown has the astute duty of being able to make sure that we are programmed correctly, and that from a phasing standpoint that our locations are going to be open and ready for business when those terminal sections start back up again. And we have some very specific goals in regards to what we want to achieve in terms of right-sizing the terminals, because in some of our terminals we didn't have enough capacity in terms of retail and food and beverage locations. In other terminals we had too much, but we're now looking at right-sizing where we would have 60% of our inventory be focused on food and 40% on retail, and that we would look to achieve 8 to 10 square feet per enplaned passenger, and that our goal is $10 per enplaned passenger, and today we are well under that. When you look at the 2 terminals, we have some inventory in Terminal B, 2 locations in which Kevin Lemons will talk about a little bit later, but the majority of the inventory that's going to be let in this request for proposal is in Terminal E. And as you can see, they are well below that $10 mark. So we are looking for enhanced concepts that will deliver the kind of foot traffic and the experience that our passengers are looking for, and that will also help us in achieving that spend level, meaning that they may not be able to get a total of $10 from one location, but if they go to a retail location and they pick up something, and then they go and eat something, that total spend in terms of capture rate is what we're looking for. We want the shoppability as they go through our renovated terminals. That being said, we talk about traffic. We've done lots of work in regards to looking at our passengers and understanding what the flows are going to look like in the future, and keeping in mind that we can do all the forecasting in the world, and we caveat that with every caveat, asterisk, asterisk, that things do change. But from today's view, Mark Thorpe, who is our Assistant Vice President in Air Service Development, is going to come up and share with you where we are today and what we're forecasting in the future. Mark?
Thanks, Anola. Although you should probably have them hold any applause until I was done, see if they like what's said. Just quickly, I have a few slides. Oops, I guess this is the... Okay, yeah, I have a few slides. I'll go through them pretty briefly. And if you don't have an opportunity to ask questions today, you can always follow up with an email or a phone call and can further discuss any issues or concerns or questions you might have. Overall, at the airport, when we look at the annual employments, now our fiscal year 2012 outlook is one that was done some time ago. We have not revised them for 2012 and 2013 yet. That's important. I'll show you in a couple slides. You'll see why, particularly for Terminal E, because we've had growth that has just kind of blown past our projections in Terminal E. But what you see here is consistent growth as we come out of the economic recessions. We've had pretty strong growth each year during what's been a pretty challenging time, economically speaking. When we look at in-plane passenger traffic by terminal, what you see here is that Terminal A is down, C is up in large part because of trip. A lot of the flights, as we've closed gates in A for the construction there, have shifted over to C. So it's sort of an artificial, the trend is kind of artificially induced, if you will, or forced, I guess, better way to put it. In Terminal B, there's a slight drop as well. That's again because of some of the trip-related issues, some of the flights being relocated to the East Satellite, some other areas as well, and also some cutbacks in American Eagle's schedule. Terminal D, there's been growth because of the international traffic that we've seen, the growth there. But as you see with E, even though it's a smaller overall volume, there's been pretty consistent growth there the last couple of years. Looking at Terminal B, as I said, it's an American Eagle terminal. These are all airplanes that are 37 to 50 seat regional jets. It's primarily connecting passengers. That number is really probably, looking at it a little bit more closely, it's really still in that high 60s, lower 70s, mid 75% range. There's been some change again because of the artificial nature of trip shifting flights around, but overall, typically you should expect B to be about 75% connecting passengers, just by the nature of the American Eagle operation. It's mainly feeder flights onto larger American Airlines mainline flights. Looking at B, this is the impact of trip. The below are the gate closures related to trip. What you see in B is that you have 6 that were planned and then some additional ones as well. So that's where you see the challenges from the trip project in terms of its impact on operations at B. So the point of that is that you should see those constraints, as trip moves along, B should be less constrained and able to bounce back in terms of its passenger traffic. When we look at the forecast, the red bar is actually the latest 12 months using end of May data that we have, the latest data we have available on a per airline or per terminal basis. The blue bars are our past forecasts. 2011 is actual, and 2017 for some reason is light blue as well. I don't know, maybe that's when everything's done with trips, so it's our blue sky vision, I guess. So what you see at B is that B is down compared to the historical numbers and the expected trends. But again, that's because of the trip project. Once that's completed, we fully expect traffic to get back onto that slope of that growing slope through the next 5 years. When we look at E, now switching over from B to E, E is our terminal for basically everybody but American. It's our kind of United Nations terminal, except that it's just for the U.S. carriers. It's a combination of legacy and low-cost carriers. So you have your United and Delta operations there. You also have Alaska and U.S. Airways, which are kind of between the legacy or your legacy large carriers, and then your LCCs like Spirit, JetBlue, Virgin America, and Frontier. You can see here that it's very much an OD passenger, origin destination passenger airport, very few connections, obviously, because for these carriers, Dallas is a spoke in their system as opposed to being a hub. The individual the gate assignments for each individual airline, Delta and United obviously have the most gates. U.S. Airways has a fair number. Spirit has 2, but will probably be growing in the future if their growth continues. As we'll see in a moment, it's been pretty incredibly rapid so far in the last 18 months here at the airport. And then JetBlue, Virgin America, and Alaska each have a gate. There are 3 gates that are board or airport controlled, and we use those for overflow operations or for growth at additional flights that can't be accommodated at the gates that have preferential rights associated to a particular airline. Now out in the satellite here, Terminal E, this was formerly what Delta called Easy Street when Delta had their hub here. The satellite out here is where, as Trip comes through and begins to impact E, those gates will be used so that you'll continue to have the consistent level of operations in the terminal that you have today. So you won't have as much of an impact in E, like, for example, you see at B today. When we look at E's actual numbers and then the forecast, again, this is what I was talking about earlier, we've really already blown through what we had projected just 6 or 9 months ago for this fiscal year and then into the future. I mean, we're already beyond what we had projected through 2017. That's been attributable to probably about 800,000 net new passengers generated by Spirit Airlines just in the last 18 months at the airport, and Delta passengers with 6 additional daily flights to LaGuardia, and JetBlue coming in with 3 flights today to Boston. So now some of these numbers you don't really see even the JetBlue numbers in there yet, because these are just 12 months ending in May. So you only have a few months of maybe a month or 2 of JetBlue's numbers, and there's a lot of new Spirit service that isn't included in these numbers yet either. So that's why I say that we'll probably continue to see growth, beyond blowing away whatever we'd projected just half a year ago for Terminal E. Now, this slide just reviews all the cities that have had new service added with JetBlue, Delta, and Spirit in the last, this is 2012. So just in the last 6 months, there's been a significant amount of new service brought into Terminal E. Spirit is poised to announce a new round of expansions, a new round of destinations that it will fly to from DFW. So you'll see even continued growth there. I had some questions internally, so it might be a question for some of you. What impact does Delta's expansion into Love Field with the Atlanta Love Field flights have on DFW? Talking to Delta, that they're still turning away passengers. I mean, they still have overbookings as a consistent regular challenge here at DFW. So this is not something where it's going to take traffic away from DFW as much as it was a competitive response to Southwest now being in Atlanta with the acquisition of AirTran. Delta wants to be in Love at Southwest Hub to sort of return the favor, if you will. But it's not an indicator that there will be a slowdown in growth or consistent activity levels at DFW. Now, the last slide, the most important slide probably for all of you is again, one person's guess. Hopefully it's pretty educated, but one person's guess of what impact airline consolidation might have in Terminal E. The reality is, dealing just with what we know publicly, American has actually just announced last week that they are interested in being the acquirer after several months of speculation on being a target for U.S. Airways. American has taken a much more proactive, offensive approach, if you will. They announced 5 airlines that they're looking to consolidate with. Now, I think it's careful, for us to keep in mind, consolidation doesn't necessarily mean an outright acquisition, particularly when you're talking about Alaska and JetBlue and Virgin America in particular. Those are carriers, at least 2 of them, JetBlue and Alaska, with whom American has had long-standing, very, very strong code-share relationships. The relationship with JetBlue has become much more expansive in the last couple of years. So consolidation could even mean, a more expansive code-share relationship that allows some of these potential, partners or targets, if you will, to do more of the domestic flying that would feed international operations at DFW for American. So consolidation doesn't always mean an outright acquisition and saying goodbye to an airline. It could just mean more JetBlue flights that, are essentially carrying domestic passengers for American. But the five are JetBlue, Virgin America, Frontier, Alaska, and U.S. Airways. All five of those are carriers that are in Terminal E today. So the big question is, what is the impact if there is an American U.S. Airways marriage? Or although Alaska, I guess, just today announced that they're not interested in being a dance partner with American. Could change. I mean, sometimes that's just say, I'm not interested at this price, But the reality is, in any one of these instances, if there's a merger with American, there's a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, I mean, American could either continue, or whatever the new airline's name would be, most likely American. They would continue to use the gates, and it would just be their passengers going through those gates instead of the former carrier's passengers. They could give the gates back and allow for growth from other carriers. But at the end of the day, I think the one thing to keep in mind is that we actually, in order for an airline to have a preferential right of a gate in Terminal E, we require that they have 6 flights. They have 6 departures a day from each gate. So there will be a minimum requirement for American to continue to have preferential use of whatever gate they would get through consolidation. They would have to have a minimum of 6 departing flights a day. So a consistent level of service. In other words, there won't be the acquisition of an airline to then block and tackle an E by preventing growth from other carriers. In addition to what may happen with consolidation, I think it's also important to keep in mind that Americans publicly announced, this was several months ago, their plans to grow their hubs and gateways. Their gateways being LAX, JFK, and Miami, and their hubs being DFW and Chicago. They announced they want to grow their hubs and gateways by 20%. There's no more specificity than that as of yet. But as they exit bankruptcy in the coming months, I think we're going to get a more clear idea of that. But keep in mind, if we're talking 20% growth at DFW is their largest hub in the world by 59% to be exact. But 59% larger than Chicago O'Hare. So if you're talking 20% growth by American, whether they're using these gates through consolidation or whatever may be happening, there's going to be quite a bit more activity here at the airport. So I don't think it's as far as we can see looking at it, whether it's American as we know it today or in some sort of new partnership. I mean, we know that in all likelihood, the headquarters are very likely to stay here in Dallas. The focus on Dallas will probably continue, and we expect traffic levels to consistently grow as they have in the last several years here at the airport. And I'm glad to take any questions if you have them. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. It always amazes me, class. It always amazes me that when we open up that window of opportunity, you guys can talk. I mean, you guys take full advantage of it. People start walking around the room and introducing. And did someone reach in to pull out a card or something like that? Well, not only is this a great networking opportunity for the persons that you're sitting next to, it's a great opportunity to network with DFW International Airport. Because we want to talk about the opportunities that are available to you, but it begins with some key information. So we're going to talk about passenger demographics. And how do you do business at DFW? Let me give you a quick overview. One of the things that we do as a concessions department, we partner with our marketing department. And what our marketing department does with us, they conduct passenger intercept surveys so that we can understand what the passengers are looking for. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what concepts that we're bringing, if it doesn't meet the needs of the passengers, then we've missed the opportunity. Would everyone agree to that? Okay, since no one is going to talk to me, maybe I should come back up and then we can talk. Would everyone agree to that? We need to know what the passengers. Thank you. Okay. So we look at the passenger demographics, and then we look at passenger flight frequency. It's very important because if you have a location that's at a certain area within the terminal, you want to understand the frequency of flight activity, right? So let's talk further about this. Let's go the right direction first. Overall DFW Airport demographics. So the average age is 44, and 24% is between 35 and 44. 25% is between 45 and 54. So that kind of, if nothing else, lets you start to think about what concept are you bringing to the table and who would purchase your services or your concept or your product, if you will. 35% have an annual income of over $100,000. So that means that we do have some kind of disposable income. Would you not agree? Okay? At the same time, 53% are male, 47% are female. Look at what, in fact, you bring to the table from a concept standpoint that resonates with either one or the other. 25% is ethnically diverse, okay? And on an average, they fly 7 times per year. So you have an opportunity to get repeat business, okay? How you handle that customer makes a difference, but we're going to give you the right demographics to be successful. So since we're talking about Terminal B and E today, let's start breaking it down. Let's look at Terminal E. The average age being 44, okay? You've got O&D that's at 91%. That's origination and destination passengers. And then you got 9% connecting passengers. The ratio of gender is 50-50, male-female. So let me stop right there. This is very important information for you when you're making your determination as you're building your bids, your proposal, to understand when you look at the overall, we just presented the overall for DFW, demographics, but you've got to get inside of the key components of this specific terminal. Make sense? Because if it doesn't resonate with this terminal, do you think you can be successful? You got to take a close look at what you're presenting and what's available. So from the standpoint of business and leisure with the minutes that they're actually here, O&D, you got 92, you got connecting 113 minutes. This is kind of dwell time. You got, from a leisure standpoint, 54%, and from a business standpoint, 46%. So let's look at the preferred concepts from the surveys that we've conducted. You got 56% preferring local brands and 44% national brands. That's a pretty good mix when you stop and think about it. So that means that when we do our request for proposals and we're talking about local, regional, national brands, if you will, we're trying to encompass the entire gamut of opportunities from a desire standpoint for our passengers. You look at the fact that 58% quick serve, 42% full service / sit down concepts. So let's break it down and look at healthy options, ethnic cuisine, sandwich deli, burger, and barbecue. I think we've just kind of covered everything there. When you look at ethnic cuisine, that's a multiplicity of different cuisines, if you will. So you may have a cuisine that resonates more with Terminal E versus Terminal B. You got to get inside of that and understand, again, getting back to the demographics that we've shared earlier. 13% specialty retailers from a retail standpoint. From a retail standpoint, 58% convenient retail, 29% necessities. Drugstores, books, newsstand, electronics, computer supplies, women's apparel, and beauty. Let me share, I go back to the earlier demographics. We talked about 50-50 in some cases, but how many of you have concepts for women? Is the new trend that more ladies need to be addressed from a needs standpoint when they're traveling? Maybe you have that concept. Maybe you've got the right mix. Maybe you've got the right opportunity that will yield a service that cannot be denied for ladies and or men, whichever the case may be. Look at what we have to offer and take full advantage of it. You know, I'd be remiss. I'm one of these persons, I love, let me see if this thing works here. No, it's not working. Wait a minute. Well, I wanted to look at this here. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, I should have put my picture up there. I barbecued a couple of weeks ago, and I took some great photos. And I want you to know my ribs look so good, and I even took this photo with the smoke coming off. So I'm very proud. So I just want you to know I can compete with this, okay? Nothing wrong with a little plug here, you know? So let's look at, one of the things that's very important is the day part, okay? Day parts make or break your business sometimes. And is the concept that you're bringing to the table resonating with the right day part for that particular terminal relative to that particular demographic? So let's take a look at it. And since we're talking about Terminal E at this point, you've got almost 50% of the average daily seats from a day part standpoint, 50%, really 46.3%, that's a breakfast day part for Terminal E. You got to understand, does that mean that you're going to come in and focus on something that's adverse to that? You got to look at this. You got to look at the fact that here you've got, in American, you got 26%, that's the breakfast day part, but you got 46% in the latter parts of the day. You got 43% in American Eagle areas at the latter part of the day. But up until around 11 o'clock a.m., Terminal E, you got 46% breakfast. Huge observation. Hence, someone talked about maybe we need to be talking about a breakfast concept. Maybe think about that. Is your concept that you're going to offer, bring to the table a breakfast concept relative to Terminal E? I'm just sharing that there are potential opportunities if you think through this thing. So let's take a look at Terminal B now. Again, the average age is 44. You got O&D passengers, if you will, that's 28%. You got 72% connecting, okay? Now, again, you kind of 50-50 almost. You got, from a gender standpoint, 51% male, 49% female. Look at your demographics. From the standpoint of dwell time, if you will, you've got 47% as it relates to business, 53% from a leisure standpoint. Again, similar to what we shared a little bit earlier with Terminal E, just take a look at the points of differentiation and understand how will your concept meet the needs of these passengers. So there's something else that we need to take into strong consideration. Many of us have street side operations, okay? There's a difference. Street side operations, you have your traditional operating costs, of build-out costs, you have your rent, employee costs, and insurance. Well, when you get to the airport side, it changes just a little bit. Let's see what we have here. So that iceberg just got deeper. Are you with me? So now you have build-out costs, which are 20 to 40% greater. You have TSA security requirements to get through TSA. So there are some delays there. You've got production, product distribution. How is it that your product is getting distributed to your stores? What are the time constraints and things of that nature? Because we've got governing factors. You've got O&M costs that you've got to deal with for each terminal. You got off-hours operations. What is that? How many of you have traveled under the sound of my voice and been delayed? Okay, so those of you that haven't raised your hand, do you travel? Okay, the point I'm trying to make there is that when we have irregular operations or off-schedule operations, if you will, that's when you're going to have someone, well, Michael, can you work a little bit extra time? So now maybe the store would normally close at, let's say, 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. It may have to remain open until midnight, until the flights get in. So those are extra costs that are generated. But a lot of times when that happens, there's a lot more cha-ching. Everyone with me? Because there's a lot more money, right? I think I'm talking to myself. I really do. Okay. All right, so let's go for it. Banking. How do you handle your banking in an airport environment compared to street side? They just can't pull straight up to the location and come in the back office door and pick up your banking and take your banking. Those are things you got to look at from an operational standpoint. Airline gate utilization and annual surety bonds and deposits. Those come into play when you're dealing with an airport environment because those are costs that are different from traditional in most cases. Everyone's okay with this? Let's look at current operating costs as outlined in our schedule of charges, okay? Now, this is subject to change, but we wanted to give you somewhat of a more concise look-see at some of the charges. So you look at vehicle access charges, it equates to about $1,100 per person per year, okay? You look at new badging and fingerprinting, that's about $110 per person. You look at badge renewals, employee transportation. You look at operating and maintenance charges, okay? Administration fee. And then we have a marketing assessment that's 0.2% of your gross receipts. Now, what happens with that? As you travel through the airport, we get with our marketing department and we help you to promote your business. And that's that marketing assessment fee. We take that and what we do is around the airport, we put up signage to let people know where you are. We run on our FID monitors, that's our flight information displays. We run information that talks about specials that you guys may have and things of that nature. So we pride ourselves in trying to help you build your business on a continuous improvement process, okay? So let's look at an example of a P&L when you're operating from a food and beverage location. Now, this is based on about a $2 million annual gross receipt operation, okay? So total, it gets to the bottom line, frankly speaking, total annually is about $79,000, if you will, okay? Or 4% based on that $2 million annual gross receipt pro forma. But you look at your current rate here, and this is not sure. So you look at your current rate and you come across, and that gives you your annual figure based on the number of units that you have. So let's say fingerprinting employees, you got 60, and that gets you to $3,600 at $60 each, just to give you a snapshot of what this is. But this is something that you got to take a close look at as you're doing your bid, because we're looking at it also. So frankly speaking, take all of this above into consideration as you're preparing your proposal. So while we've just talked about demographics, one of the things that we've learned and we've endeavored to do is be an educational system as it relates to doing business with DFW. What we've done is we've had debriefings. We incorporated this after we had our first RFP proposal for Terminal A when we started this whole trip initiative. Subsequent to the bids coming in and being awarded, we started having debriefings. We wanted to not have a one-way situation. We wanted a two-way street where we can talk to you and tell you some of the things that may make sense as you go forward with submitting your proposals. And then at the same time, we wanted to get feedback from you so that we can create betterment as well. Because would you not agree it takes two hands to wash, right? To get real clean. I've been trying to talk to you. You don't want to talk to me today, huh? Okay. But it does take two hands to wash. Now, if I see you doing this, I know don't shake this hand. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some of the lessons that we've learned from the debriefs. We took about 10 of our top lessons that we learned, okay? One is that you guys kind of said to us, okay, could we put stronger emphasis on concept, okay? And that's what we wanted to say. We're going to place stronger emphasis on the concept. That's after meeting the base criteria. So as you look at the description for the concept, once you meet that base criteria, okay, tell us about, put the emphasis on your concept. Let us understand, clearly what your concept stands for. You'd be surprised to know how many bids we get in when we have limited the information with respect to our concept. But this goes back to something that we have. We have a saying at DFW, tell your story. If you don't tell your story, we don't know your story. Kevin Lemons is going to talk about criteria a little bit later. He's going to get into what the selection committee gets to look at and things of that nature. But you got to tell your story. If you got a selection committee, group of selection committee members over here, and they don't know you, they've never seen your concept, you've got a story to tell. So now you need to tell it to its hilt, okay? So number 2, from individual scoring to pass-fail scoring for base criteria. So let's look at finance, and let's look at ACDBE/MWBE, okay? We used to have a score there. So now we're talking about a pass and fail. Be certain that the information you've received regarding this bid, regarding this request for proposal, that you read the information extremely carefully, because this is very important. Number 3, more specific description wording, must-haves versus desires. So we're looking at how do we be more definitive in what we're communicating as well, because we want to be certain that the description is crystal clear, okay? Future, more specific concepts. So we've endeavored to be more specific with our concepts to try and remove as much ambiguity as we possibly can. So these are things that we've endeavored to enhance. An executive summary. When we did the very first, we talked about the fact that I think we received about 103 proposals, 101 proposals the very first RFP that went out. Now imagine 101 proposals. What we got into was looking at the proposals, and people are going through, at some point, things get to running together. So what we came up with is establishing an executive summary that's a 3-page executive summary. Now, as Kevin talks about, as he comes up later, he's going to talk to the various areas of criteria. When you look at that executive summary, we say to go and call to attention, create the awareness that you need to create for a specific area of criteria. In other words, let's say one of the areas is concept. Well, you want Michael, that may be that selection committee person, looking at your bid to say, oh, their criteria or their concept is this, or their finances say this, or their ACDBE says this. What you want to do is be certain that you look at the information and call to attention certain attributes that may create a point of differentiation for your concept versus another. Is everyone clear on that one? That's very, very huge. Expanded rent category. We've taken a look at that, okay? Because these are things that came out, okay? You've got a percentage rent category. You've got a MAG category. We're looking at how does that change? How do we expand on that? So take a close look at your bids that you're preparing. Take a close look at what's being requested and required. Variety of packages. We've heard you. So we're providing a variety of packages, okay? So we're expanding that. More specific design requirements, okay? We're taking a closer look at that. But what we can assure you is that regardless of what we do, if you don't look carefully with a very intent of dotting all I's and crossing all T's, then you'll miss the opportunity that is available through the efforts that you guys have spoken to us with regard to. Expanded checklist, okay? We're looking at that. We've come up with the things that will allow you to check off and things of that, so you can be more precise in your information that's being delivered, and so that we can be more intent in seeing those things and what you'd like for us to see with your packages. More concise presentation, okay? As we've spoken to you up to this point, have we been concise enough in what we're looking for up to this point? Would you guys agree? Because you ask us to kind of narrow it down so you guys can get the meat of everything, okay? That's what we're endeavoring to do. So hopefully we've been doing a great job, okay? Guess what? There's always room for improvement, so we're not perfect, okay? So bear with us. So let's take a closer look at something else. Let's look at your opportunities from a proposal standpoint, okay? So what we need to ask you, and what we have learned in the debriefings we've shared, provide the accuracy and completeness of your proposal. Read the proposal regardless of who prepared it. Now let me talk to that. The reason this is up here is because of the fact we've sat in debriefings where there have been some aha moments. Can everybody say aha? Aha. The reason I say that is because simply of the fact we've sat in those debriefings and the aha moment came before that, my God, I didn't know this was in there. Aha. Okay? But this is what you submitted. And this is what that selection committee got to look at. That was an aha moment for them, just like it was an aha moment for you. We're going to talk about some of those aha moments that may make sense for some of us on the sound of my voice. Complete all forms, certifications, and submit deposit. Believe it or not, we've received some bids that have come in. Oh, I forgot to put that deposit in there. Did you just shoot yourself in the foot? Yes, you did. Take a back step. Sometimes I always say, sometimes I got to back up to get ahead. You got it prepared. Take a back step, come back up, say, let me take another look. Did I get that deposit check in there? Are all of the forms in there? Because if, in fact, the selection committee or the persons that are reviewing your package are looking for certain components and it's not there, check. It's no longer a valid submittal, right? So look at that. Next insured proposal was received at DFW and request a receipt. You'd be surprised to know that some people didn't request a receipt. Did it come to DFW? May have not. Supposed to arrive on Friday, may have arrived on Saturday, okay? Did it arrive on time? I mean, you've put a lot of effort into this. You spent dollars that optimize on the opportunity to the fullest extent. Proposed based on concept description. Well, what is the description? We talk about not only tell your story, but look at the description. If the description is asking for burger, don't bring chicken. It has happened, okay? And so it's the little things. I say it's the simple things in life we deface that amount to the greater things we can't erase. What tends to happen is you deface it looking at what you're supposed to be reading, and yet you present something else. But that just kind of derailed you. So now you can't take advantage of that opportunity. But you may have had the greatest concept in the world. So, but submit in respect of that particular description. Provide everything that DFW has requested. Because as we look at, and those descriptions are built specific to the needs of that terminal, believe it or not. They're built specific to the adjacencies and things of that nature. So we want to know that you have what you have so that we can do proper assessment of your concept. So, more. If providing a standardized design or photo, this is very important, you must provide a proposed floor plan for the DFW Airport space. Why is this important? Because we want to understand that you understand what you're submitting for and that you're submitting the right information that's relative to a given space. Will the space that you're submitting for accommodate your concept, for example? We have received cookie cutter sheets coming in, typical sheets that maybe a corporation may have, and that's okay. But you got to be specific to this particular opportunity at DFW International Airport, okay? Read the lease in its entirety. Okay, the base lease, that is capitalized, and I need to point this out, that it is non-negotiable. So you're getting a copy of the lease. You're getting a draft of the lease, okay? That base lease that you're receiving, that is non-negotiable. Yes, we have had some bids that have come in, and at the point of awarding, want to start negotiating. That's not negotiable, and that's why we wanted to place full emphasis on that today. Very important. Know your partners and entities at all levels, including financial roles and responsibilities. Read all ACDBE and financial elements in their entirety. That's kind of self-explanatory. You'd be surprised to know sometimes we've sat and some have not even known their partners and where they all fit in the scheme of things. So very important, okay? Understand disqualification and pass-fail criteria. Under the section that speaks to disqualifying factors, if you will, it's noted. Please read it, okay? Let me say, on that note, sometimes there's a pass and fail situation. You need to know there are certain concepts that we at DFW International Airport, we want to see at DFW. But if you fail to acknowledge the fact that there's a disqualification factor that's associated and you don't comply with that, and we miss an opportunity just like you miss an opportunity. So this is a two-way street here. This is real partnership, and that's why we're sharing this information to the extent that we are. Not all packages are called for interviews. Let's talk about that. Because of the fact we get a lot of calls, I tell you, it's amazing the way the word travels when, in fact, Michael got a call saying that he needs to come in for an interview, if you will. Michael was the only one called, but all of a sudden you got John, Sally, Doe, David, and David's cousin calling. I didn't get a call for an interview. Well, that doesn't mean that you're not a front runner. What that means is that we need to get more pertinent information with regard to a specific concept or something. There's something that we need. Or maybe we've gotten to the point that you got a couple packages that are very, very close, and we need to address that. So everyone, because in fact you don't get a call for an interview, does not mean that you've lost, does not mean that you should have received a call. So we needed to be precise in sharing that with you today. I know in some airports you probably go through this, and so many get all of the different requests to come in for interviews and things of that nature. That's not the case here, because we're trying to be more concise and more precise, and that's why we do what we do with debriefings and all of these and the outreaches that we do to the extent that we do, so that we don't have to go through a lot of the back end, but we're going to be the greatest partner that we can be. So each airport criteria is different. You'd be surprised to know that you cannot, from airport to airport, it differs. And resonate with that from the standpoint that we're unique as an airport, just like San Francisco may be unique. Love Field is unique, even as close as we may be. And you've got to think about that when you're submitting. Go back to the information we provided from a demographic standpoint. Go back to the information that we've provided from a specific criteria standpoint. Look at what DFW is asking for. Here's a very big one. The last one is do not submit a proposal with another airport's name embedded. And that is a laugh, isn't it? Can everybody say aha one more time for me? Because you'd be surprised to know how many aha moments we've had with that. All of a sudden we're sitting and we're looking at the proposals, and it says, so-and-so airport, this will be great for so-and-so airport, is what it said, one in particular. My gosh. Did you read, or did someone else prepare it for you, and yet you didn't read it? You were so busy, and you spent this money to prepare this bid, and yet you did not read your bid that was coming to DFW International Airport, okay, and a great opportunity, and it wasn't worth your time to take the time to review that package in its entirety. That's when we start having those aha moments, and I'm telling you, it does happen. So what that says to DFW, or anybody, forget DFW, any other airport, that says that you've taken this and you've changed the front name and you didn't get in the body of it to change the other names. Here's my proposal. It's cookie cutter. Well, we're unique. And you know what? You're very unique also. You have a great concept. You're unique in your persons, and if you will, and we're very excited about that at DFW Airport. That's why we want to get the best of what you guys have to offer. That's why we endeavor to give you the best that we have to offer, and we thank you guys very much. If, in fact, you have any questions, we've provided cards, okay? And those cards, if you will, write your questions down. if you have any hands with questions at the front here, because we like to answer your questions, and we're going to try and save those for the appropriate time to feed back to everyone. Any additional hands for questions? Okay. All righty. So right now we're going to bring Kevin Lemons up, who's our manager of concessions, and Kevin is going to talk about the evaluation criteria. Thank you very much.